Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 266th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the MSP studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. Starting to get over my sunburn a little bit.
Yeah.
I think my face is peeling a little bit, only in like one side of my face.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, I've heard some horror stories of various people who attended the Mizzou game who are dealing with much worse sunburns than I had.
Yeah, absolutely. I was feeling it on my right side. I think producer Cameron got the worst of it of the three of us. But
yeah, I was peeling already the next evening.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. You get there, it was like 50 degrees outside, and then all of a sudden it was like the hottest 58 degrees I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
Just sitting there baking in the sun.
Sun beating down.
If you dip down into the, like under the bleachers to the concessions or whatever, it dropped like 15 degrees, it felt like.
Yeah, we got there at like 8 in the morning or something? Mm-hmm. And it was like, is this hoodie going to be enough?
Seriously. Yeah, I packed like an extra jacket and gloves and all kinds of stuff, and then turns out I had gloves just in case.
Okay.
You want cold fingers?
No.
Well, I left them in the car, so. We're going to talk about that LSU game. We were there and had a wonderful time. We'll tell you about that, and we'll preview the Kentucky game and do a little mid-season review of the football team. Before we get into all of that, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, leave us a review wherever you listen to us, and of course you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Talking about that LSU game, I guess we'll just start with what an incredible atmosphere. Honestly, we were talking about before the game, like we went to the Mizzou-Kansas basketball game last year and how electric and how fun all of that was, basically right up until tip-off. And
the actual game started?
Yeah, right up until the actual game started. And we were kind of joking around when we figured out this was the game we were going to go see, just thinking about, well, at least we'll have that again, especially like undefeated. No matter how the game goes, we will have that electric atmosphere, be kind of partying beforehand. And lucky for us, that fun continued up until about 1 minute left in the football game.
Yeah, that was my fear. Even though I felt like, we have a very realistic chance of winning this game. I think we both picked Missouri to win last week on the show, but that was like my only hope, really, other than a win, was just carry the momentum into the game. Like, let's see an exciting game. Please don't Mizzou Kansas this thing where it's over in 5 minutes and we're just like, well, time to go home?
Yeah.
Like, don't make me do that. Don't make me go there. And that didn't happen at all. It was like a super fun game, just back and forth, just great offenses, and obviously it didn't end how we wanted it to, but it was a really incredible experience. Yeah,
I think it was as packed as I've ever seen it in person, I think.
I think it was for me.
Right up there with any other time that I've been on a sellout. And got to shout out Britt and everybody at the Wright and Associates tailgate. The
Lot P,
the Missouri Tigers lost the game, but the tailgate was 2-0. We had breakfast before the game. It was fantastic. And then came back afterwards for burgers and Luther Burden chips. Really couldn't have asked for a better experience there. And we got to see Tim and Tyler and Matt and some listeners. So that every bit of that aspect of it, even driving back and forth, I don't know, it was just so fun. Like literally everything but the last minute of the football game.
Yeah, the crowd was awesome. The MIZZOU thing that goes back and forth, that's always such a cool moment. And like the ZOU after, like when we get a first down.
Yeah.
Man, that's loud. Everybody's ready for it.
It was hitting hard.
It was hitting for sure. So
hopefully there was a lot of recruits there, and hopefully they, just sort of soaked in the atmosphere and everything, because I don't know, if you're telling me we've got like Ryan Wingo and a handful of other big time recruits showing up, that's the atmosphere I want them experiencing.
Absolutely.
Even with the loss, it was like you just get the vibe like, yeah, it would be fun to play in front of this crowd.
Yeah, for sure. And not only that, but Luther Burden in the season he's had, in the game he's had, Brady Cook being from St. Louis and some of that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I feel like you put the talent on display. The crowd was incredible. Everything except for the not getting the win, it really was about as good as it could have possibly been.
I was seeing tweets and stuff from before that there was like close to 70 recruits there.
Yeah, massive visit date.
That's
and
wild.
Including like some of the biggest guys in the 2024 class. So Ryan Wingo was there, and Jeremiah McClellan was there, and a host of others. So sounds like they did a good job showing off what Mizzou can be, and hopefully we'll continue to reap the benefits of obviously Coach Drinkwitz's really good track record with recruiting, but also kind of backing it up with the play on the field and the NIL stuff. I mean, that's probably like, this is our window.
Yeah.
To hit the NIL stuff hard, get your money earlier than you're going to get it anywhere else. Kind of have everything, the stars aligning for recruiting right now. So gotta make the money now though.
Yeah, Mizzou in football or basketball has not been on the right side of that kind of timing very often over the years. But as far as the game itself, honestly, it was the fireworks, high-scoring, high-flying offensive shootout that we kind of expected and were hoping for. Missouri's offense got off to a fast start, got the ball in Luther Burden's hands. Brady Cook was making throws. I'm pretty sure it was back-to-back plays. He put it right on Weiss in the end zone, but it was dropped. They go right back to him. Another perfect throw right into his hands. Just, he doesn't have to, he's running the exact same pace through the entire route, just drops right into his hands for a touchdown. That was really impressive. They grabbed that 2-point conversion to take an 8-0 lead. And basically the whole first half, the first half up until the Brady Cook interception, you couldn't have asked for anything more from the offense, I don't think.
Yeah, they were playing really confidently and going to their go-to guys. And, I mean, I think Luther Burden had 100 yards receiving by halftime. And, had some good plays from Daniel Blood, who stepped up, and Marquise Johnson was there, and Mookie Cooper had some really nice plays. They really kind of shared the wealth, but also Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, with kind of the main two guys, were really playing well. So it was like we knew the LSU defense was, especially the secondary, has been really bad. And it looked like they really knew the scouting report going in. Like, they weren't trying to run all that much. And, I mean, you can tell why. The defensive front for LSU is really, really good. And the secondary has been super suspect. And so they were taking advantage of that early. But it did feel like LSU kind of tightened up in the secondary as the game went on. I don't know if maybe the offense wasn't playing as well, but it felt like LSU's defense made adjustments.
And I also think that they were getting a little bit more pressure on Cook in the second half and making him speed things up a little bit. But in the first half, Schrader got a touchdown. Norfleet got a touchdown, his first of his career. Mizzou had a 22-10 lead with 5 minutes left in the half when Brady Cook threw his first interception of the season, breaking his streak, which he had just talked about in the press conference the week before that we talked about on the episode last week, that's going to happen. He's not scared of it. So got that out of the way. But that interception just kind of seemed to throw things off for the offense for a little while, because LSU immediately just scored easily. And Missouri was lucky to get a field goal there to end the half. They had an opportunity with the ball and had a penalty and just ended up, I think, Mevis had to kick a 50-yarder to even get 3 points there going into the half. But the score at halftime was 25-17 Mizzou. And it was kind of like, okay, this is very solid. I mean, I heard the radio broadcast say 25 points was the most for a Drinkwitz-coached Mizzou team in the first half of an SEC game, beating the previous high, which was 24 against LSU in 2020. And I don't know, it just felt like, okay, we're on pace to score 50 points. That should be enough to beat this team. And but that little offensive lull that seems to creep in, even when they're clicking for the most part, we still get this little lull where there's just not a whole lot going on and teams are able to get back into it.
Yeah, for sure. Like going into halftime, it felt like we could have probably been up by more than we were. I guess we would have been up by 8, and we were going to get the ball.
Yeah.
Starting the third quarter. I actually missed half the third quarter standing in line for a drink, but I was kind of watching this. I could see the big screen.
Yeah.
So I was kind of watching that, but if the vibes were just totally different in the third quarter, and Brady was struggling a little bit. Mevis missed a kick in the third quarter, which could have made the game different if he had made that. So yeah, this was definitely a game of momentum, and first half was great. Came out really aggressive. Even LSU's first drive, came out very conservative, but they realized they were going to have to turn it up eventually because Missouri was playing so aggressively on offense.
Yeah, that was one thing that surprised us was LSU was pretty committed to running the ball. I forget his name, with Diggs. Yeah, consistently throughout the whole game, and he was effective.
Yeah.
Both of those things surprised me. I don't know. They must have seen something in film leading up to this game where they felt a little bit more comfortable challenging Missouri's defense on the ground. And so maybe a little bit of disappointment there that they weren't able to shut that down a little bit more effectively. It's one thing for Daniels himself to be mixing it up with his legs, but I would have guessed, and we did talk about going into it, that Missouri's defense would do okay with slowing down Diggs and making sure Daniels would have to do it himself.
Yeah.
Which he didn't have any problem doing either. But
No. Yeah, I was pretty surprised by that, but it makes sense that Daniels can't. Well, I was going to say Daniels can't carry the team by himself, but he definitely can. I feel like maybe that's something that they identified as a way to just make Daniels even better, was just add one more threat to the offense. Like we got to commit to the run game because it makes defending the read option even more difficult. But Daniels just, man. We knew. I mean, we talked him up last week. We knew how good he was coming into the game, and he might have been even better than I thought he was going to be, and was just so consistent. Played through an injury too.
Yeah.
And man, he's a really great player.
Yeah. One thing that kept me optimistic about Missouri's defense throughout the whole game was there were multiple times where LSU got down into the red zone and they just couldn't quite punch it in at first, and then they were helped by some penalties and. It was just like kind of messy, multiple trips down close to the goal line for LSU, which I was looking at as kind of a positive that they didn't just punch it in one play once they got down there. But I think they got in, every time they were kind of in the goal to go situation. Daniels, though, he was incredible. And the second half was really the Jaden Daniels show. There was a moment there, like you mentioned, where he was hurt and the backup quarterback came in for a couple plays.
Totally different vibe too.
Oh man, if Daniels wasn't able to come back in this game, that it would have been smooth sailing for Missouri. I think. Not only was he the one that kept LSU in it, but that other quarterback seemed a little bit lost, and the crowd was hyped. And
he was not going to get the job done, I don't think.
Yeah, so with Mizzou's offense a little bit stagnant, Jaden Daniels gave LSU a 27-25 lead with that just wide open touchdown pass. I forget his name, the guy that's like leading the country in touchdowns.
Brian Thomas.
Yes, he caught that one, and then but Mizzou answered. Schrader got a touchdown to go up 32-27. Then the fourth quarter was Jaden Daniels just making plays.
Yeah. You thought the second half was, or the third quarter was Jaden Daniels' show. It ramped up even more in the fourth quarter, which is typically what great players do. But man, he was unstoppable in the fourth quarter.
So I wrote down here 4 plays in particular that I called Jaden Daniels heartbreakers, where Missouri's defense was in a good spot and then he just bails out LSU. Daniels, for the game, only threw the ball 21 times, was 15 of 25 passing, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns, 130 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. So 389 and 4 touchdowns, 0 turnovers for Daniels. But First quarter, Daniels in a 1st and 20 after a penalty on the Mizzou 27. He escapes pressure from Hopper, runs for a gain of 19. Then we kind of keep him bottled up. Has the injury a little bit, but the fourth quarter, these 3 plays were absolute backbreakers for Missouri's defense. Fourth quarter, 3rd and 9 on the LSU 9. Daniels evades pressure from Niles Gaddy, I think it was, runs for a first down. Fourth quarter, 3rd and 3 from the Mizzou 32-yard line. You, standing right next to me, said quarterback draw before the snap. Sure enough, Daniels' QB draw goes all the way for the touchdown.
I felt like that was so obvious. Like they had just empty backfield. They spread they had 5 wide.
Yeah.
Like spread everybody out. Light box. It was like this is the dream scenario for a mobile quarterback to just take this thing to the house. Just immediately too. There was no hesitation. As soon as he got the snap, he just ran it right up the gut.
And then again in the fourth quarter, this time 3rd and 5 from the LSU 40. Daniels keeps it. Looked like maybe a read option. Gains 30 yards, and then the next play was the easiest touchdown pass you've ever seen in your life to Neighbors.
Yeah.
He just turned it on, and Missouri could do nothing to stop him.
Yeah.
They were even getting hands on him on some of those runs, and just nothing.
Right. Yeah, those 3 plays in particular are so demoralizing. And I was watching some of the highlights back, and that play, the first one you mentioned of the 3, where we're like
3rd and 9.
Yes, we're
way
inside of LSU's 10-yard line.
Yeah.
And the defense had been playing pretty well up until that point. I can't remember how we got there. I think we had a really good punt or something, and also there was a penalty. So it really backed him up, and we were in the backfield, should have wrapped him up, and just he found a way to get out of it. And I feel like that's just what makes those players, those mobile quarterbacks, so dangerous, is just having to go back to the line and just have those fresh set of downs is so demoralizing.
Yes.
Knowing how close you were to just getting the ball back and making a stop. And I think they drove the entire field and scored. I think that was the same drive where he scored on the quarterback draw later.
Yeah.
So it's just so tough to play against players that are that talented, that resilient.
Yeah, and I was trying to, we'll be jumping around here a little bit, but I was trying to kind of get my thoughts together about the Mizzou defense and their performance. And I don't know, I just couldn't bring myself to be too negative about it, because some of these players on this LSU offense are just incredible. And, they go 3 deep at wide receiver with elite playmakers, and Diggs showed what he could do on the ground. He was very efficient. And, we had drives that ended the way we wanted. Like LSU got into the red zone at one point, and there was a big play from Chris Abrams-Drain batting a ball away where he just had his guy locked up, and LSU had to settle for a field goal. They were getting enough wins in a few spots to where I couldn't be too terribly negative. I guess the worst thing for me is the amount of times they kind of got Jaden Daniels off of his read and got him moving around, but then couldn't really bring him down, couldn't keep him bottled up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
it was like they needed to get to him quicker. The first guy that got there had to make a play, or else it was going to just
it's like
disappear.
You can't even have a traditional pass rush against a player like this. Like you have to just try to keep the edge, or just try to keep him, bottled inside with, you can't let him get to the sideline, that kind of stuff. So I do feel like, it looked like we had like a pretty good pass rush, and then he was like, okay, thanks. Just I'll step up and run it for 10 plus yards. And I don't know, man, like, we know how we don't have the best depth at defensive line. It looked like those guys maybe got a little fatigued by the end of the game. That depth of LSU maybe took over a little bit at the end, because the fight that they had to put in to score in the first half, just it wasn't there. In the second half, they were scoring at will. And no turnovers either. That's just you're just never gonna win that game, I think, if you don't turn them over at least once, and that just never happened. And that's one thing Missouri's really struggled with all season. I think they've only turned the ball over 4 times all season. So they really needed something to break like that, with just how good LSU was the whole game. And I think we kind of talked about that last week in our preview. Was That's probably how I see LSU winning this game. Is Missouri's defense is going to be good. They're solid, but LSU is going to get theirs. Do we think Missouri's offense can keep pace in a shootout? And that's pretty much what happened.
They did, and Missouri's offense kept pace for almost the entire game.
Yep.
Yeah, when it came down to the end, LSU took a 42-39 lead. Mizzou's offense did wake up a bit. They scored once in the third and then once more in the fourth. Schrader ended up with 3 touchdowns on the game, I believe. But LSU goes up 42-39, and then in the ensuing drive for Mizzou, that was the one where Cook hits Weiss for a big gain on a screen, first play.
Almost get to field goal range in one play.
Yes. Yeah. This was one of those things where they're going back and forth, and it's like both teams just keep scoring so fast.
Yeah.
There was one like probably LSU scored twice with a Mizzou score in the middle where it was just back and forth.
Yeah. At this point in the game, I think there's about 2 minutes left, and there's so much that happened after this. But it really did feel like, okay, Weiss just got this like 30-yard gain on a screen. We just got to field goal range. Like, we almost need to slow the game down so we can just have the ball last and try to score here. Like, obviously a field goal ties it. So we were trying to score a touchdown ideally, but that's not exactly how this drive went.
Yeah, so right after that, they hit Mookie Cooper for 9 yards, setting up 2nd and 1, or right around midfield, but on LSU side a little bit, I think. And then we get a snap infraction. Well, before that, pass play from Brady Cook gets batted down at the line. Then on 3rd and 1, a snap infraction moves us back 5 yards. And weirdly, not in the post-game press conference, but the press conference about Kentucky, Coach Drink was asked about that play. And because another thing in this game was the refs kept calling
Disconcerting
signals. And on the in the stadium, we couldn't quite hear it, or at least I couldn't. And I didn't make it out every time, but eventually I heard them say, defender clapped while the offense was set. That's what they said every time. And I went back and I did see that happening.
The LSU players doing that?
No. When they called it both ways, I saw what they were talking about.
Okay.
It just never would have occurred to me that would be a penalty.
I don't think I've ever heard of that penalty in my life.
Yeah. One in particular on Mizzou, like Rakestraw, you clearly see him clapping and trying to get, it looked like he was trying to get another defender's attention to be like, and then he like points something out or whatever.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, they're using the offenses are using the clap for their cadence and everything.
Yeah, I mean, Brady Cook does it on just about every play.
Right. So Drinkwitz was asked, with those disconcerting signals called and the snap infraction, did Connor Tollison say if there was anything like that going on? And Drinkwitz,
very long pause.
Yes, he said, I better not answer that considering the rules about talking about officiating. I went back and looked. I didn't see any clapping, but whatever.
It was like some weird thing where I don't even know what happened. Like,
Tollison just snaps the ball early,
okay,
like before the entire offense was set.
It looked weird in real time, but I still wasn't really sure exactly what happened.
So that backs up Missouri 5 yards. Then the next play, Brady Cook does not notice the LSU defender coming around his blind side and gets stripped. Missouri takes over, or not takes over, but they get on the ball, and that brings up 4th and 30 or something. 4th and
32.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just want to pause here for a second because it feels like there was so much that happened after this that I feel like I forget how close we really were to the end of the game at that moment, where it was 3rd and 1 or 2nd and 1 or whatever it was. We had 1 yard to go, basically in field goal range, where we have the ability to kind of control our destiny. And probably the worst thing that's happening in most cases is we're just kicking a field goal. If Connor Tollison just doesn't have a snap infraction on 3rd and 1, like, who knows what happens in that game? And I would pay a lot of money to be able to go back in another dimension and find out. But it's so demoralizing knowing how truly close we were to tying this game up or maybe even winning it on that drive. And yet there was so much that happened after it because of the mistakes that were made.
So on 4th and 32, even the 3rd and 6, you'd like to have a
even
couple
that.
retries at that one.
Sure.
Producer Cameron and I were on 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1. We were just like begging them to just run the ball and get a first down.
Yeah.
But
Don't get cute.
Yeah. So 4th and 32, they try to play a hook and ladder play to Weiss that gets them a chunk and makes it a little bit more manageable for the defense. But
gets LSU out of field goal range whenever they get the ball back.
And that, looking at what happened, that looked like that was goal number 1 was, let's just try to get a chunk here and get them out of field goal range. If something happens and we're able to get the first down, incredible. But just trying to buy a little room for the defense, it looked like. Still had 3 timeouts.
Do you think going forward on 4th and 32 was the right decision?
I mean, like I said, it kind of looked like the play call wasn't exactly what, I don't know. There's not really, how do you have a go-to play call for 4th and 32? But I don't know. That play right there didn't seem like that was it.
Do you feel like there was more to that play potentially that didn't happen? It felt like there was a couple different options that the players had in the moment.
Yeah, watching it back, I mean, Luther Burden is over there kind of on the near side on the TV view, just with nobody around him.
Just waiting for a pitch potentially.
Yeah, or looking back at it, I would rather him just throw it to him immediately
Just a screen
and just see what he
to
can
him?
do.
Oh, yeah.
Because the defense was way back, obviously.
Yeah,
I think
32
that was
yards.
part of the problem why the play, it was too far. They were already like way too far back for them to even like be fooled by anything. Like everything was in front of them.
Yeah. So you might as well just throw it to Luther and see what he can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the time, I think you even said maybe we're going to have to punt. Like in real time when we were watching the game together, and I said, I don't know that we can.
Yeah.
But we did get the ball back.
That's true.
So it's like, I didn't think there was enough time. I mean, there's a minute and a half left.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly thought if we give LSU the ball here, they can probably take a knee. But that was not the case.
Yeah, I mean, 3 timeouts. They had to get a first down, and LSU gets the ball back and doesn't get a first down. I think, let's see here. Yeah, they run it with Diggs twice and Daniels once.
And that's when Daniels like fumbles it.
Yes. Oh, I actually kind of forgot about that a little bit. That was another
it
moment.
felt like there were so many chances where it was like they were almost opening the door for something just absolutely insane to happen.
The hope that inspired in that stadium for a split second was something else.
I will literally never forget the "oh my god" that you let out like whenever he fumbled it. Like just kind of like did the ball hit the ground?
Yeah,
it was a legitimate fumble.
It looked like that was gonna get like it was happening. The miracle was gonna happen, but of course it just lands 5 feet away from him.
Right back up in his hands.
Just goes and picks it up. Oh man!
I mean, that would have erased like 5 years of like just horrible luck. And in that moment, if somehow Darius Robinson, because I think he's the one that was putting pressure on him.
Yes.
If somehow he ends up with that ball, and we win the game.
Yeah. Let me look.
That's the most improbable thing that could ever happen.
That was 2nd and 8, under a minute left, 50-something seconds left, and that's all. Everybody in the stadium just going, okay, what could possibly happen here? They're in the shotgun. Maybe they fumble the snap. Maybe it's a bad snap. Snap it over his head. Please let a miracle happen. And then when he loses the ball, it's like it's happening.
Yeah.
No.
Just a tease.
Couldn't be. He gets the ball back, but then they have to punt. Missouri's going to get the ball back. Very little time left, no timeouts, but we're going to get the ball back.
Was this the greatest punt of all time?
The greatest punt of all time. He sends it out of bounds where nobody can return it, and it goes out of bounds at like the Missouri 5-yard line. Getting full points on the coffin corner kick mini game there. Like platinum medal for that.
Yeah.
But Missouri gets the ball back, 40 seconds left, and Brady Cook throws a pick 6.
Yeah. And LSU covered.
That was it. They covered the spread.
It's weird to think how much happened after we attempted a hook and ladder.
Yeah, exactly.
There was like 2 different like changes of possession that happened after we tried the most desperate play in the world.
There was a little bit more desperation when Mevis kicked a 54-yard field goal. He missed it, but the plan there was to make the field goal and then kick an onside kick with 3 seconds left in the game. But nope. Couldn't. Just reliving it right now. It's just like
It's very painful.
Yes, the energy was so high. The stadium was so loud on third downs, and LSU had a couple false starts. The stadium would get even louder.
I know. It's very emotional to just think about, like, what if we just win that game?
I'm picturing the football in the air, 3 or 4 feet away from Jaden Daniels in the air. And yeah, but then if I look closer in my mind, I see no, not really any Missouri Tigers near.
Yeah. And all I'm thinking about is just go back to the 3rd and 1 and snap the ball normally, like you do hundreds of times a game. Yeah, I mean, it just to go back, I guess, to that offensive line penalty, it just almost is starting to feel like I expect it. In a big moment, the offensive line has really hurt us with, even going back to last year. This group has not had a great track record with clutch plays or like just not doing a penalty in the worst possible time.
Yeah, well, and Drinkwitz talked about it in his press conference. He said, when you're kind of looking at the first half of the season now, what needs to change in the second half of the season, he specifically mentioned pre-snap penalties from the offensive line is just...
And not even penalties, but like there's been at least once, maybe twice, where Tollison snaps the ball and Brady's not ready for it and stuff. Like, man, we have to figure that stuff out. That stuff is so backbreaking, especially in a close game like this, where you cannot afford to give the ball to the other team because you'll just fall behind.
Yeah, I was thinking about Tollison specifically, and he is still just a sophomore.
And he's playing a lot better this year than he did last year.
Yeah, and he's still a sophomore, and I can sort of paint the picture in my head. I see the narrative forming of him as an upperclassman just cleaning that stuff up and being stellar.
I think so.
At least like as a senior. That's a ways away, but
that's some growing pains for sure.
Need the rest of the offensive line to kind of grow around him and the whole unit to be successful, but it seems like we've had a little bit of a mismatch where it's like interior of the offensive line is solid and we're giving up too much pressure on the end. And then when we've got the pressure sort of figured out, then we're not getting the push in the run game and we got young guys committing penalties. It's just hasn't quite formed into that, that sort of like 2013-14 offensive line.
Yeah.
Missouri ends up losing. What was the final score? 49-39.
Yeah, you mentioned something after the game on the way home that scoring 39 points, that should probably be enough points to win. Do you feel that way still against LSU?
That's funny. Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was watching the highlights and looking at LSU's schedule. In order to beat them this year, you have needed to score. Let's see. Well, Florida State scored 45 and Ole Miss put up 50 something. So,
yeah, you thought that Mizzou LSU was a shootout.
Yeah,
LSU Ole Miss was even up a notch from that. That was just nobody's playing defense in that game.
And I wonder if LSU running the ball more against Missouri was kind of like let's just try to make the time of possession make a little bit more sense here. Let's try to slow this down a little bit.
Right.
But no, I can see, I don't know, it's tough because you think a SEC defense, your offense puts up 39, you'd like to be able to win that game. I think I still kind of stand by it because you've got a missed field goal and 7 of LSU's points came on a pick 6. So that's 42-42.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like one turnover that turns a LSU touchdown drive into Mizzou possession is the ball game right there.
Yeah, they've got to figure out a way to start forcing more turnovers.
Yeah, there's one point at the end of the game where I'm looking up at the scoreboard and I see the goose egg in the turnover column for Mizzou or for LSU, and I was like, man, that'd be huge.
Tells the story of the game right there. And there was one play in the first half where LSU fumbled it out of bounds, and it was kind of like, ooh, that may have been the moment. That may have been the opportunity that we missed. Looking at some of the stats here to round it out, Brady Cook went over the 400-yard mark on the on a big play to Johnson to set up the field goal with 5 seconds left.
Most garbage time play ever, but also incredible play from Brady and Johnson.
Yeah. So Cook ends the game 30 of 47 passing, 411 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Schrader, 13 carries for 114 yards and 3 touchdowns.
That's super efficient on 13 carries.
Yes.
Wow.
Pete, only 2 rushes on the game.
Yeah, I mean, we just pretty much had to throw every play almost.
Yeah. Luther Burden, 11 catches for 149. Weiss, 4 for 80. Cooper, 7 for 80. The offense was clicking for the most part.
You got Malik Neighbors stats by any chance?
Yeah. Malik Neighbors, 6 catches, 146 yards, and a touchdown.
It was pretty awesome to see him and Burden going back and forth.
Yes.
Those guys are two, if not two, of the best wide receivers in the country, if not the best two.
Yeah. Both of them got to be top 5.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of guys putting up numbers this year, but
those guys will both have long NFL careers, I believe.
Looking at some stats, Brady Cook is now 5th in the country in passing yards.
Wow.
Luther Burden 1st in receiving yards.
And they got off to a very slow start. Even maybe they were playing checkers or they were playing chess, I guess. So they kind of took those first 2 games pretty slow.
Mm-hmm.
If they had the foot on the gas pedal, man.
Yeah. Was there any point in the LSU game where he felt like the offense needed to press down on the pedal a little harder and didn't?
I don't know. I mean, I did not get the feeling like we're just trying to get out of this game and run down the clock, kind of like they did against like Middle Tennessee State. It was like, all right, we got the lead, let's just get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I did not get that feeling as much against LSU. I genuinely felt like they were playing pretty aggressive the whole game, and I think LSU just made adjustments.
Yeah.
And then Missouri, I think, countered, punched again, and made adjustments in the fourth quarter, but just couldn't get it done.
Coach Drinkwitz talked about, or one of the things he said this week in his press conference was he said every team in the East is still on the schedule. So that's a perfect segue into Kentucky, the first SEC. No, Vanderbilt's in the East. The rest of the East teams are still on the schedule. And Drink talked about those pre-snap penalties. He talked about unsportsmanlike penalties on the defense being an issue. And yeah, that was a huge thing in this game with Walker getting ejected for 2 separate unsportsmanlike conduct penalties.
Yeah, the referee ran over to Coach Drinkwitz after he got the second one, and on the hot mic, like he forgot to turn his microphone off, and you could hear him say something about him spitting on a guy. And Coach Drinkwitz just did not fight it at all. He just immediately was just like threw up his hands like in frustration with his own player. Yeah. Because there's just nothing like you can say about that if that's really what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, he said in the press conference just like sort of generically like we expect better. That's not how we play. Yeah, that's frustrating. And talking about what needs to be better in the second half of the season, Drinkwitz specifically mentioned both sides of the ball need to be better on third down. And we talked about Jaden Daniels extending drives with his legs on third down. And we know, even though it seems like it's been a little bit better as of late, third down efficiency for the offense has been an issue. But before we jump completely into Kentucky preview mode, I wanted to maybe I'll just throw some names at you or some positions at you and see just kind of what we're feeling or what you're thinking about their performance so far in the first half. Obviously, still just the beginning of SEC play, but we've seen this team now quite a bit. If there's still question marks, that's a perfectly valid answer. But how are you feeling generally about just some names here that we don't talk about as much, like on the defensive line, Jernigan, Landry, Realist George, Christian Williams, that interior of the defensive line? We feeling good about that? I feel like they're going to be tested more, especially in the running game, as we get further into SEC play, starting this week against Kentucky.
Yeah, I think on a macro level, I think you have to be pretty happy with how the team's playing in general. And I think we knew that even bringing back a lot of the defense from last year, we were probably going to see some regression happen. Losing Isaiah McGuire and Coleman were absolutely massive losses to the defensive line. And whenever your defensive line is not as good, it just affects the whole defense, maybe more so than any other singular position on the defense, in my opinion. And so I think we're seeing that a little bit. Obviously, we knew the defensive line was not going to be as good, but for the most part, I think they're playing pretty well. I think having Robinson on the outside is less than ideal, but I still think he's playing pretty well. I think it's you make a good point. Like where they're really going to be tested is probably these SEC offenses that want to run the ball a lot, and so I think we're really going to see that with Kentucky this weekend. I think that'll probably be like the best test so far with how that interior of the line's really holding up, because they're going to have to be kind of the stars of the show on the defense this weekend, probably more so than anybody. So it's a big test, but for the most part, I don't know that you can complain too much with how those guys have played.
And then the one player that's being singled out way too much on social media and stuff after this LSU game is Tyler Stevens at tight end. And he had a few drops in the LSU game, had one big catch early for a first down. He's made some plays. The tight end room still hasn't quite put it together, but we kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on tight end? Do you see it changing much, or are we kind of just in for a repeat of the first half of the season?
I don't know. I mean, he did make a beautiful catch on a third down play at the beginning of the game, and then follow that up with like 4 straight drops. So that's obviously really frustrating. Most of them are like pretty short passes that I don't really changes anything. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm always a proponent to get I'm always advocating for those young players to get in, especially talented players like Norfleet. Am I watching Norfleet on every play? And no, I don't know if he's like can block. I don't know if he can hang around for every single play. But I think he should be getting more snaps for sure and being put in more like leveraged situations where he's having to like come up with a big catch. Like if you're going to use Stevens that much in the receiving game, yeah, you might as well have Norfleet out there.
Yeah.
Because Norfleet's proven that, he has an extremely high ceiling for what he's doing as a true freshman. I don't remember the last time I've seen a true freshman do the things that he's doing at the tight end position.
Probably Albert O.
Probably, yeah. Honestly. So I guess I'm in favor of getting Norfleet out there as much as we humanly can.
And at the same time, though, him being a freshman, you got to wonder, he may not, like you mentioned the blocking, but he's probably not going to have every different protection, perfectly memorized, and he may not have the playbook down completely as a true freshman where they feel comfortable doing that. And that's just one of the issues that we knew was going to happen. We didn't have any super talented upperclassmen, and the talent in the younger guys, they're super young.
Yeah. I'm sure to some degree Stevens is playing out of necessity, and there's probably some behind the scenes stuff that we aren't privy to. But I would love to see Norfleet be out there more and depended on more. Throw it to him more. He's shown that he can make those plays.
The defensive secondary is going to be tested a little bit more in the Kentucky game just because Rakestraw's out. That's been confirmed now. They're holding him out of the game as he tries to get back from a groin injury that sidelined him for quite a bit of the second half against LSU. And coach said it's something that's been kind of nagging him off and on for a few weeks now. What are you thinking with the secondary? It feels like Chris Abrams-Drain is doing his thing. Feels like the corners in general have been solid. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of just looking at the defense and being like, what's the issue here? Like, we know the pass rush is not quite there, but is there something in the secondary that you think they're going to improve on in the second half, or is there any question marks?
I don't know, man. I think, again, going back to last year, like having that pass rush from DJ Coleman and Isaiah McGuire just covers up so many issues that I don't think we maybe don't see as many issues this year if those two guys are still here. But I definitely feel like the safeties have not been as good as I had hoped. I think Carlisle has struggled a little bit in coverage, and maybe hasn't made as many like physical plays as I feel like we're used to seeing him play. So,
And we've been seeing the true freshman Burks a little bit,
That's
maybe
true.
because of that.
yeah, Carlisle's missed the first game of the season with an injury, so I don't know if he's maybe still dealing with something, but I do feel like he hasn't really been the same player that we've seen in the past from him.
Yeah, without like breaking down his individual tape, it just feels like we're not hearing his name called very often.
Right. Yeah, he's usually good for some hard hits or like coming up to the line, or he's usually gets a few interceptions and stuff. But yeah, he has been a little invisible. I think the transfer from Florida, Johnson, has we haven't seen a whole lot of him coming up and making plays either. So yeah, I kind of feel like the secondary has a lot of room to improve. Like you mentioned, the injuries with the cornerbacks, but I don't think that's been the issue as much. So I definitely would like to see the safety step up a little bit.
And then I feel like we've talked about quarterback and receiver enough the last few weeks that we don't need to necessarily do a whole breakdown of that. But I will mention, if you just take their stats from the first half of the season and double it, Brady Cook would be sitting at 3,758 total yards, 32 touchdowns, and now 4 interceptions.
Yeah, I think we'll take that 10 out of 10 times.
Luther Burden, if you double his stats, 108 receptions, 1,586 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking Mizzou records especially for Burden, if he's gonna keep the pace that he's been going at, like for really all of those categories, like receptions, yards, touchdowns. He's doing incredible stuff.
For that combo, just knowing, like Mizzou fandom can just sleep easy knowing that combination is back next year, no matter what happens in the second half.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
And then Schrader, to his credit, he's on pace for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. So that's
what happens when you get the ball 20 times a game.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm just kidding. He's been awesome.
All right, now moving on to Kentucky properly. Kentucky ranked 24th in the AP poll. Missouri drops out, but I think they're number 1 receiving votes team. British Cameron, you okay? I don't think the listeners can hear you coughing. I shouldn't have said anything.
We are genuinely concerned about your health.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
I was going to ignore it, but then I was like, what if this is an actual medical emergency? Kentucky was 5-0 on the season with wins over Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vanderbilt, and Florida before losing to Georgia last week, 51-13.
Yeah, Kentucky has been a very difficult team for me, at least, to predict what they're going to do because, they get the big transfer in the offseason and with Devin Leary. They have the offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, come back after spending a year with the Rams. And, he was really good when he was at Kentucky in the past. So they kind of have these things really going for them in the offseason. Their offensive line should be better, all this stuff. And then they start off the season pretty bad. Like they have some very, very beatable opponents that they seem to kind of struggle with. And then they so I was putting the fraudulent tag on them and stuff and pick them and stuff. And then they just were proving me wrong. They beat Florida and they're 5-0 going into Georgia game. And then so I start changing my tune a little bit. And I think I said last week that they would probably not beat Georgia, but they will cover. And they just get blown out.
Yeah. Well, and I picked them to win outright. So
yeah. So they've been a little bit of a confusing team so far in trying to predict what they're going to do.
Yeah, and I've been kind of on the Kentucky is good bandwagon with Cohen coming back and with Leary being one of the top transfer quarterbacks in the country last offseason.
He's played a lot of football.
And their defense is like borderline top 10, top 15 defense in the country. I really thought I was for Pick'em trying to get the
really
upset.
Thought they were going to win the Natty.
Trying to get the upset points, but I really thought they'd be way more competitive against Georgia.
Yeah.
Because Georgia's been like starting slow in a lot of these games
For
and
sure.
needing to mount a little bit of a comeback or kind of turn on the gas late.
Yeah.
And I thought that would play right into Kentucky's hands of just maybe getting a lead early and then grinding the game to an end.
But Georgia came out swinging, and I don't think they have really done that very much this season.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Georgia played by far their best game of the year. I was looking at Kentucky's win over Florida. They just put it on Florida early, jumped out to a 16-0 lead in the first quarter, and they were able to just coast off of that because of their defense and their running game. Leary only threw the ball 19 times for 69 yards in that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the worst possible thing that can happen when you're playing Kentucky. That's what they want to do, is just grind away the win, get up early, and kind of game script you to death. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did against Florida. And we just, I don't know, man. We cannot afford to let that happen on Saturday. But if they could design a win, that's exactly how they want to do it.
So then they play Georgia, and in that game, Carson Beck just is throwing it all over the field. He's 28 of 35 passing for 389 and 4 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah, and then, like I said, basically exact opposite, where Kentucky now has to throw the ball to stay in the game, and that's like the worst thing that could happen. So yes. Missouri really needs to be aggressive like they were against LSU. Like if Missouri does exactly what they did in the first half against LSU, like get up by a couple scores, like I don't think Kentucky's coming back. Yeah. I don't think they are built to throw the ball around and make big plays consistently and stuff through the air. So that will be the nightmare scenario for Kentucky if they have to try and claw back in the game against Missouri.
And for better or worse, Missouri kind of wants to get a lead and then speed the game up and get the game over with as quickly as possible. Now,
they haven't exactly done that super well, but they've tried.
We don't always know if that's the best strategy for this Missouri team, but
that's what they want to do.
Yes, exactly. Devin Leary obviously transfers over from NC State, and he was actually recruited to NC State by Coach Drinkwitz. He was asked about that in the press conference, and didn't want to talk about it too much since they're playing him, but that's just weird how long ago that was. Mm-hmm. He's only completing 55% of his passes this year for 7.5 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
Yeah, he's really been pretty unremarkable.
Totally pedestrian.
Very pedestrian. Maybe, would you say mediocre even?
Yeah, mid.
He's been very mid. It's like, he's very experienced. He's very smart. He's going to make the right decision a lot of the times, but he really has not been explosive this year. And it just, I don't know. I'm not that scared of him with our secondary.
Me too.
I think we're going to, this is the weird thing about this game is like all the matchup stuff seems like it favors us, but I know better based on how this game has gone in the past to where something's going to go awry and it's going to be close or something.
Absolutely. This is a one-possession game.
Yes.
Devin Leary does not scare me. He played his best football 2 years ago for NC State.
He's washed up. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. However, who does scare me is Ray Davis. Holy crap. He, one of the reasons they were able to be so successful putting the game away against Florida is they just handed it to him a ton. The team ran the ball 36 times in the game against Florida for 329 yards. And with now, perhaps LSU was throwing something at Mizzou with the running game that they hadn't put on tape a lot before that game, but LSU kind of made Missouri's run defense look a little shaky.
Yeah.
And Kentucky wants to do that, and Ray Davis is definitely capable of it. He's 9th in the country in rushing yards, 1st in the SEC. Schrader's 2nd in the SEC, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the difference there is that we didn't know LSU was going to do that. True. And so everything they've done this season, like, has just, everything goes through Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
And so I think that was maybe what caught us off guard a little bit, was like, oh, okay, they're really trying to establish it.
Yeah, Daniels had more rushing attempts on the season than Diggs going into the game.
So I think at least we'll know that Kentucky's going to try to run the ball a lot, but their offensive line is better than I thought. They're really pretty creative and run a lot of different run schemes and stuff. So they're going to get some stuff on the ground. There's pretty much no way around it.
Yeah, so basically for Missouri's defense, you got to be playing to not let Ray Davis turn a 7-yard run into a 15-yard run. And we can't let him turn a 15-yard run into a 30-yard touchdown.
Right.
We got to make him grind for these scores.
Yeah. And Kentucky has 2 really good wide receivers. And Dane Key, especially, I feel like is a guy who's kind of burned Missouri in the past. But I just feel like I can see it now where Missouri's selling out for the run, and they're doing a pretty good job containing Ray Davis, and then Dane Key just breaks like a 60-yard touchdown, like on a slant or something. Like it just, I feel like I can just see it now where we're doing really, really well, and just in a pivotal moment, just one of their wide receivers breaks a huge play whenever we're not expecting it.
And that's, that's basically been their entire passing offense has been
Just catch you off guard.
huge plays like that just bust the defense open. Defensively for Kentucky, this is the best defense Missouri has played by far.
Yeah.
They really do a good job. Nothing's changed with their defense. They do an excellent job of limiting you to but what I'm asking Missouri's defense to do. They limit your big plays. They make you work for it by
Really
sustaining
physical.
drives. Yes. Yeah. And that scares me a little bit because can Missouri, are we in a loud atmosphere in a night game? Can Missouri have a 12-play touchdown drive without it getting derailed by a false start or something?
Yeah, that is true. And we're probably going to have to try and dink and dunk a little bit more than we did against LSU, obviously. It's going to have to maybe be a little bit more calculated, longer drives and stuff. So that is a little bit of a scary thought. Can we string a whole drive of 10 to 12 plays together without messing up? I don't know.
And another thing that I've been noticing or noticed more in recent weeks is the tackling is better in SEC play than it was in before conference play started. So Luther Burden, while he's still making big plays, we're not seeing as many of these where he's bouncing off of 4 defenders and turning something, that was going to go for a short gain into a touchdown. Now, I think he can still do that against SEC opponents. It's just going to be less often.
Yeah.
So I think he's actually due to break a tackle and take a slant to the house or something big, game-changing play. The last couple of games, teams have been doing a pretty good job of keeping him out of the end zone. So I don't know. I look for maybe a little bit of, it sounds weird to call it a bounce back game because he's leading the country in receiving yards, but it's more of these touches should be turning into points directly from him.
Yeah, he has, 5 straight games with 100 yards receiving?
Yeah.
And, that's getting pretty close to Denario Alexander's 6th game?
Yes. The record for consecutive 100-yard receiving games is 6 from Alexander.
That's a tough matchup to get 100-yard receiving against, though, against Kentucky. So that's the meta game to watch for. Can he get 100 yards receiving? Keep the record going.
Overall, you think how much success Missouri's offense going to have?
I think they'll be okay. It's not LSU's secondary, but Missouri's really balanced. They have a lot of options. Cody Schrader apparently has a quad injury, so I don't know if he's going to be at full strength too. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Well, Coach was saying he wasn't at full strength against LSU, and nobody could tell, basically.
Oh my God. He's a beast. But I think Brady's going to be wanting to bounce back a little bit, just to kind of flush the loss out, kind of exercise some demons here against Kentucky, just a team that, just spooky stuff happens every time we play them. Doesn't matter what the matchup is, doesn't matter what the record is, the officials are always against us, and something weird happens.
Kroger Field. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Grocery store field. Oh, man.
Pretty cool.
You like it?
Yeah. No, I hate it. I feel like something about their stadium is just kind of boring. Maybe it's just the Kroger name.
A grocery store is probably the most boring thing that could sponsor your field.
Yeah.
Man, I'm thinking about my prediction here, and I'm pretty certain in preseason I had this down as a loss.
I can't remember what I did.
It may have been Missouri's 3rd loss on my preseason predictions. You were down on Kentucky. I was high on Kentucky.
That's true. I probably had them winning this game.
I feel like this is the ultimate coin flip game, 50-50.
Yeah.
Going to come down to the end. There's going to be drives where Missouri's offense just looks great, and they are picking up 4 or 5 yards and just marching down the field. And then there's going to be, I think, there's going to be more punts in this game than we saw last week.
Hopefully no 17-yard punts.
I mean, just razor thin margins, I feel like.
Yeah,
on the road.
We're going to have to get a turnover, I think, to win the game. But I do think we're going to win the game.
Okay.
I'll say my prediction.
Okay, go for it.
I think Missouri's going to win 30-27.
30-27.
Is that higher scoring than you thought?
No, not really. Because before you said it, I wrote down mine. And I've
28-27?
I've got 28-27 Kentucky.
Oh!
And I'm hoping to be wrong 2 weeks in a row.
Me too.
You're hoping I'm wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that feels like it. Like, I would be willing to say you're playing to 30. Team gets 30.
Yeah.
They win.
Yeah, let me tell you, Cameron, this game is large.
Yeah.
This game is very, very important. And I don't know that if you lose this game, it's like the end of the world or anything like that, but it's about as close as you can get to that in football terms, probably. Like, it's just, man, Missouri has to do something to be willing to get up to that second place spot or even give themselves a chance to win the East. Like, I don't think that's happening the way Georgia played last week, but you got to give yourself the chance to be there, and there's just no chance if you're losing this game.
Producer Cameron, can you find me a spread for Mizzou, Kentucky? Yeah, lose to Kentucky. I mean, in theory, lose to Kentucky, beat South Carolina, lose to Georgia, lose to Tennessee, beat Florida, beat Arkansas. You're 8-4. So
this is potentially the difference between a good and special season.
Yeah.
Would you say 9 wins is a special season?
I feel like it's like begging for some other fan base to clown on us by me saying like, well, yeah, considering recent history and, we're talking about Missouri.
I would say probably not. 10 wins special season.
Yeah.
10 wins, you're looking at potentially playing in Atlanta.
Yeah. And maybe whatever they call it, New Year's Six Bowl.
9 wins and a second place finish in the East. That's a great season.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Probably not special.
8 wins, that's good and solid and really
probably
things
what we
moving
should,
in a positive direction,
and
really something to build on.
What we should hope for every season.
I would agree with that.
The line is Kentucky by 2.5.
Oh, well, we're
wow
all right around that number. I got Missouri losing but covering.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, man. It's going to be a very close coin flip type game. But it is.
If it's a blowout, who wins?
Missouri.
Think so?
I do think so. If it's a blowout, Kentucky's offense can't get anything going, and it's a blowout like 35-13 or something. That kind of blowout.
I like that. I agree. Missouri gets up early. Kentucky's all out of sorts. They got to try to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Missouri's able to coast a little bit. They score a couple touchdowns in the second half, put it away for good.
I would be very, very happy if that happened.
Yeah. If that happens, like halftime scores like 21-7 or something. Oof. I'm seeing it.
Okay.
It's a possible future for us.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of possible futures where Kentucky wins it by a field goal or less. They just eke it out.
I don't think I can handle it if that happens.
Well, the one thing I'll say, these Eli Drinkwitz teams, they bounce back from losses pretty well. They don't get too down about it, and the things we've been hearing from the players in the press conferences and stuff. Darius Robinson was talking about how they feel like they're more together than ever, and Drinkwitz was talking about that. Coach Drink, as annoying as he can be sometimes, I'll say annoying, in his press conferences, he really does an excellent job of protecting the players. I'm using air quotes but he really does shield them from criticism in a way that I'm impressed by. Like
Yeah.
he came into the Kentucky press conference, and the first thing he wanted to say was he wanted to correct himself from the LSU post-game press conference where he incorrectly laid out which player was to blame on a defensive breakdown. Didn't name the player or anything, but he was talking about a specific play. And he came out and corrected himself and said, no, I explained that wrong. That was not his responsibility. I never should have gone down that path without knowing for sure what I was talking about. And obviously we know about how he has handled Brady Cook and stuff, but I don't know. That's the kind of coach that we may not see it. We may get annoyed by some of the answers from time to time, but that's the kind of coach that I think the players can really rally behind and hold themselves accountable because the coach is doing that publicly.
Yeah.
On behalf of the team.
He consistently accepts responsibility and burps a lot.
That is,
I'm a connoisseur of cinnamon rolls.
Diet Coke and cinnamon rolls will do that to you.
It's a great combo.
All right. It's going to be a close game. We got any other close games this week? You ready to pick the rest of SEC games?
There's a few.
Let's do it. I did bad last week.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nebraska coming up with a big win
Yeah.
last week.
Never saw it coming.
Well, never
You never do. Alrighty. Recapping last week, Cameron got 2 points.
Oh.
Kyle got 4. I got 5, and the guest pickers got 4.
Oh, I thought that was about to jump up to 6.
No.
Well, congratulations.
And then, so that brings our season totals to Cameron has 39, the guest pickers have 40, Kyle has 41, and I have 42.
Wow.
No worries here. No, don't even trip. We'll getting
even
it all
trip,
back
dog.
this week.
No
Guess-
blowouts this year.
Guest picker this week is Tyler.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome in.
How's that sunburn?
How you feeling, Tyler?
First up is number 1 Georgia at Vanderbilt. Georgia is a 31.5 point favorite.
Georgia.
Georgia.
Georgia has a pretty easy schedule,
Yeah.
all things considered.
Until
They play
Mizzou comes
Mizzou.
to town.
Mm-hmm. Next up is Arkansas at number 11 Alabama. Alabama is a 19.5 point favorite.
I'm not going to say Alabama by a million because, I don't know, it feels like Arkansas hangs around a little bit more than they deserve to do in some of these games.
3-point game with LSU earlier
Yeah.
this season. That's it's annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, give me Bama.
I'll take Alabama.
Alabama all around. Next game is Florida at South Carolina. South Carolina is a 2.5 point favorite.
What's my narrative here?
You're anti-Florida.
Yes. South Carolina wins this.
Give me Florida.
Spencer Rattler does enough. Florida fraudulent.
Yeah, I'll go South Carolina.
And Tyler takes Florida.
Ooh,
I like that.
2v2.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M at number 19 Tennessee. Tennessee is a 3.5 point favorite.
I feel like I keep wanting to pick A&M.
Give me A&M. A&M.
Eminem.
Anemone.
Oh, yeah, I picked them against
Alabama. Yeah. This is at Tennessee, you said?
Yeah. Tyler takes Tennessee.
You go first.
Yeah, I'll take Tennessee.
And what'd you say?
A&M.
I'll go A&M.
Ooh, 2v2.
I changed my mind. I want Tennessee. I want
Oh.
Tennessee.
All right.
Sorry. Tennessee.
You're going to let him blow us out again?
Yeah.
I know. I feel like I want him on an island, though. I feel like.
Okay, we got to single him out for good or for bad.
Yeah.
Is that
And
collusion? What we just did?
kind of.
Hey, we can collude against him. Making the guest pickers do all their picks before we say anything is collusion every week.
I suppose.
Yeah. This is a pro collusion podcast.
Absolutely. We're in favor of it.
Last game is Auburn at number 22 LSU. LSU is an 11.5 point favorite.
Yeah, I think LSU wins that by like 20.
I agree with you. Are we rooting for LSU the rest of the way? Or do we care? Are we rooting against them? Those are the options.
I mean, sure.
Root for LSU?
I guess.
Jaden Daniels is fun to root for and watch.
I guess, yeah.
You're indifferent?
I guess we should be, yes. If we keep winning, then yes. I think the strength of schedule will matter.
Okay. Yeah, give me LSU.
LSU all around.
No
That's
Nebraska.
No Nebraska.
Oh.
They're off this week.
Cowards.
Lucky for you guys.
They didn't want to face us after a win.
You all right over there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, let me find my names. Good luck, Tyler. We'll see you on the gridiron. And special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above: Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan D. Moore, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Tim Keynes, Tyler Harsel, Brandon Groffalo, Brandon Hanks, Matthew Tilley, and Luis Hernandez. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. You can find this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week. Have a good one.